Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots. Who's the better shows, does, lays, search, best, fastest minions, meat sacks. I'm Useful Idiot, welcome. And today I want to talk about the whole idea of destabilization in these groups that the United States uses. I've done a video on one such group I call the Revolution Factory, this canvas group that operates out of Eastern Europe, and is we've seen their methods and their literature and their whole philosophies applied in places like the Ukraine. But we've also seen it in the Arab Spring, and therefore it's an idea that continues to be relevant, this destabilization and how it's done. And now we have a new document that surfaced that gives some clear details on just how those kind of systems work. So every time we get more information, it becomes clear how these events in places like the Ukraine and the Arab Spring are no accident, in that U.S. foreign policy has everything to do with how these events unfold. So, as it turns out, the Obama administration has had a policy of covert support for the Muslim Brotherhood and other insurgent movements in the Middle East since 2010. And, of course, this is an important document for me because I did a video about the Muslim Brotherhood being Western puppets, and Western puppets in the sense that the United States, through various organizations, funnels money and support and helps organize these opposition groups, and then sets up the timing for these events to occur, or takes advantage of events that occur. Don't waste a good crisis. So anyway, a document from October 22nd, 2010 has surfaced through a Freedom of Information Act, and it's called the, quote, Middle East Partnership Initiative Overview, unquote. And it's a program that's been evolving since 2002, so there's no surprise there. It's another post 9/11 reaction. It started during the Bush administration, and then we have the Obama administration, like everything else, just picking up where Bush left off and continuing this program of destabilization. And this paper, 5-page paper, outlines the infrastructure of State Department programs aimed at directly building so-called, quote, civil society, unquote, organizations and non-governmental organizations to alter the internal politics of the targeted countries in favor of U.S. foreign policy and national security objectives. So pretty blatant manifesto there. And it goes on to say, quote, the Middle East Partnership Initiative is a regional program that empowers citizens in the Middle East and North Africa to develop more pluralistic, participatory, and prosperous societies. As the figures illustrate, EMPI has evolved from its origins in 2002. That's the Middle Eastern Partnership Initiative, has evolved from its origins in 2002 into a flexible, region-wide tool for direct support to indigenous civil society that mainstreams that support into the daily business of U.S. diplomacy in the region. The Middle East Partnership Initiative engages all the countries of the region except Iran. And so let's remember that, too, the number of countries. In 7 of the 18 countries with U.S. aid missions, country-level discussions and communications between the Middle Eastern Partnership Initiative and U.S. aid in Washington ensure that programming efforts are integrated and complementary. And that's a very important part of this program, because what it says is that they coordinate with U.S. aid. We all already know that U.S. aid has also been accused and documented of being the front group working with the CIA for destabilization in all these countries that we're constantly looking at. And not only that, it talks about making sure that these two organizations, USAID and the Middle Eastern Partnership Initiative, work together and make sure that their programs are coordinated. And there's 3 basic elements to this program, this so-called Middle Eastern Partnership Initiative. One is it's region-wide and multi-country programming. So in other words, they use a cookie-cutter application, and we've seen that. We've seen that in Tunisia. We've seen that in Egypt. We see it repeated in Ukraine. We see the same patterns and blueprints being used time and time again. And then number two is local grants, or what we used to call bribes. That's the simple terminology, but they call them local grants. So you pass around the money, so all these groups and these opposition groups get bankrolled. And what a great way to motivate organize people by giving them money. And then number three element of this program is country-specific projects, and that's where there's just a little bit of a twist for each country, because there's going to be something a little different between what they want and what system they work in Tunisia and what they're going to work with in the Ukraine. And to elaborate on these 3 points again, number one, you have to build up these networks of reformers and catalyze progressive change. So in other words, you organize the useful idiots, and then you give them their agenda, which on the surface is about democracy, but in the end is being co-opted into the empire. And then number two, like I say, is grants provide direct local support to opposition groups, and that apparently is half of the Middle East Partnership Initiative. So half of the program is these local grants or bribes. So essentially, that's what it's all about: a revolution machine to galvanize a young opposition group with promises of democracy, and then butter their toast with all the money they can handle. And then number three, designate officers of U.S. embassies, manage funding, and act as a direct liaison to these non-governmental organizations. And that's part of the country-specific projects. And that's a pretty damning. So in other words, in every embassy, we know U.S. embassies, like most countries' embassies, are hotbeds of espionage, and the U.S. is certainly no exception, and may be the rule. Designated officers of U.S. embassies will manage the funding, so they'll be passing out the bribes, and then act as a direct liaison with these groups. So in other words, we have an operative in U.S. embassies that doesn't work with the host country's government. They work with the local organizations that want to topple the government of that country. And so interesting little aspect of that. So let's keep that in mind when we have these consulate activities around the globe. And each U.S. embassy in the Middle East, North Africa region has a deputy chief of mission who's in charge of the Middle Eastern Partnership Initiative. So in other words, just the same very hotbed areas that we see in the news every day in the Middle East and North Africa all have these little spy chiefs in our embassies that are passing out bribes and organizing local opposition groups. And like I say, the language makes it clear that it is about working with these opposition groups and not the actual governments. And the document indicates that we have priority operations. Now let's remember this document was in 2010, and so this is just previous to the Arab Spring. And I'm going to get back to that in a minute, because I want to get to the countries first. The document indicates that priority operations are in Yemen, Saudi Arabia. That's right, Saudi Arabia is on this list. Saudi Arabia, Tunisia, Egypt, and Bahrain. And then they added Syria and Libya. So once again, remember, in 2010, we have Yemen, Tunisia, Egypt, Bahrain, Syria, and Libya, all experiencing turmoil, all on this list, all part of the Middle Eastern Partnership Program, all with consulates, with spies in them, passing out bribes and organizing local opposition, and all resulting in, certainly at this point, foreign policy disasters. But so here we have another document, once again, that ties all these ideas together and shows how these kind of programs work. And like I say, one of the things that's intriguing about this is its correlation to Arab Spring. So we have the Bush administration setting up this Middle Eastern Partnership Program in 2002, and then by 2010, Obama reconfigures it and ramps it up, and then by 2011 we have the Arab Spring, and now the disasters in the Middle East, and also the destabilization of the Ukraine. Interesting connection. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.